Instead, we're going to have a reflection. We invited, this week is Catholic Schools Week, and so we have invited our school principal, Mr. Ken Boegel, to offer a short reflection for us of the importance of Catholic education. So, Mr. Boegel.
I noticed that word almost short came in there. I don't know if that's a message, but we'll see. I always feel privileged when I get up here and do a reflection or talk to the church in any way. It has a way of humbling a person. You really need to put yourself in God's hands when it comes to something like this, because you want to be able to say it and to say it right, whatever that means. But I want to reflect on the last half of the gospel, and that is the call of the apostles. And I must confess, the first thought I had took me back, not so much to the call of the apostles, but it took me back to when I was in a Catholic school. I won't tell you how long ago that was, except to say that there were all sisters that were the teachers, and they were all in habit. And one of the things that they would do, or insisted upon, and this is at St. Louis Bertrand School in Oakland, which no longer is a school, but we still will find the parish there. They would insist on having us memorize everything. Nowadays, that's not quite as popular as it was, but they would ask us to memorize prayers, any dates. I can remember history tests. All it was were dates, kind of listed, and you had to kind of put down what those dates were and what they stood for. The strange part of it is I liked all that stuff. I loved lists. I prided myself in being able to name every president, every state capital, the countries of Europe, the largest 3 rivers in the world as far as length goes, and on and on and on. Well, what I flashed on as I heard the gospel was, I know the 12 apostles. And I remember that from way back when. Do you? And I'm sure some of you are going through in your mind. Some of you have named them already. Just kind of went right through it. It's just like that. There's some, then you got some of them, but you're not sure about the last couple. Especially those that had 2 names and all this kind of thing. And then there are some who only know 4 because they heard 4 today in the gospel. And then there are some that don't really care. And as I'm going through this talk today about this call of the apostles, I challenge you to see if you can remember who the 12 are, and extra credit if you can find the 13 who took that in place of the other. But the call of the apostles, let's face it, the call of the apostles, read in the gospel today, as meaning only if it is our call as well. That the call coming from way back when comes to us now. The call is there for Father Brandon. The call is there for Deacon Richard. The call is there for me. And the call is there for each one of you. And the second thought that I had when I'm listening to this gospel, and I've always had this when I heard this story. Now remember, we hear about Jesus coming amongst them while they're working on their fish nets, and he says, "Come after me, I will make you to be fishers of men." And what is the response? They immediately leave their nets and go with him. And that's done twice in this gospel. Even 2 of leave their father. When I think about that, I find it amazing that the call, not that the call is made, but the call is immediately responded to. Now, we can easily explain that, I suppose, with the charism of Jesus' personality and life and so forth, but I still find it amazing that someone would immediately change what they are doing at the call of another. Well, Jesus is calling us. He called us at our baptism. And many of us were baptized as infants. So sometime later on in our lives, we have to respond to that same call. And how immediate is our response? And how thorough or complete is the response? And I'll have to say that I can't say that I left nets behind and immediately got up. It took a little more. Christian calls are about letting something go before we put our hands in God's hands and let Him take us into His heart. He's called us, but the response, you have to let some things go. And it may be things that are dear to you. They may be people in the way they do things. You just have to let go. I don't mean running away from them. I mean they are no longer the center of your life. You need to turn to that person, Jesus. I found a parable as I was going through, thinking about this reflection. And I found a parable, it's not from the gospel, it's from somewhere else, and I don't know where it comes from, but it kind of illustrates this trust that I'm talking about. And the parable goes like this. Once a little girl and her father were crossing a bridge. The father was scared for his daughter, so he asked her, "Sweetheart, please hold my hand so that you don't fall into the river." The little girl said, "No. You hold my hand." And the father was a little puzzled, said, "What's the difference?" "There's a big difference," the little girl said. "If I hold your hand and something happens to me, chances are that I may let your hand go. But if you hold my hand, I know for sure that no matter what happens, you will never let my hand go." And I think that is like us with God. We have to be able to put that trust in Him to the point that we lay our lives, our hands, in His hands and allow Him to take us where He wants us to go. The call of the apostles was immediately responded to and done without any qualification. Christian calls also have to be, you have to say yes in some way in order for it to do you any good. And it cannot be done just once. It happens many times in your life. I wish I were strong enough to say what, yes, one time would carry me through my life, but there are too many temptations, too many things that keep me from fulfilling the cause. So that yes must be repeated and repeated and repeated. I was reading about a couple of saints. First was Saint Therese de Lisieux, or Little Flower, Saint Teresa of Jesus. She's a saint we all know. 24 years old at her death, died of tuberculosis. Never really went beyond the convent, yet they made her a patroness of the missions. She never really had a particularly formal education, but John Paul II made her a doctor of the church. And she's known for the spirituality called the Little Way. that she was printed in a book after her death. And it's very well known about how you offer those little things and do those little things in life to kind of make yourself get closer and closer to God. But one thing you may not be aware of is that she had doubts. And they were very severe in the sense of how deep those doubts went. And the pain that went around those were much greater for her than the physical pain that she had. And so she had to renew herself, say yes again and again. Another Teresa, Blessed Teresa of Calcutta, or more commonly known to us as Mother Teresa, writes in her autobiography of more than 20 years worth of doubt. Most of her adult life, she struggled with what it was and what it means to follow Jesus and to live that out. And here we're talking about one of the great servants of the world, and one which we do follow, and rightly so. And it's great to see how she kept to that and said that yes over and over again. What are we saying yes to? We're saying yes that we will be like Jesus. We will do what Jesus did. We keep in mind what he did for the poor, the miracles he performed, the stories he told, all those things that went along with it. And then we did what he did with his apostles. We spread the news. And that can be done in how we live and in what we do every day. But the important thing to understand is that the call is there. It's for us to respond, and respond as often as needed, and to bring that life of Jesus alive in the world. A third Teresa has written it even better, Teresa of Avila. She wrote, Christ has no body on earth but ours, no hands but ours, no feet but ours. Ours are the eyes through which the compassion of Christ looks upon the world. Ours are the feet with which he goes about doing good. Ours are the hands with which he blesses his people. We must remember hands, feet, eyes of the Lord, and be there each day responding to that original call. Yes, I'm the principal of the school. We invite you to our open house today. Anyone interested in knowing more about the school, we certainly will welcome you for that. Think about the school if your children are grown or you have your kids in other schools. Think of the Catholic school, though, as a sign of Christ's presence throughout our day, throughout the week. The school reminds us that the spirituality we have on Sunday is not just for Sunday. So please come see us. We'd love to have you. There's also a breakfast over there if you want to join in that. Oh, one last thing. Do you remember those 12 apostles?